The Georgia Bulldogs head to Oxford, Mississippi to take on the Ole Miss Rebels in one of the biggest games of the weekend. Helping us break it all down from the Georgia perspective, my good friend Graham Coffey of Dawgs Central does a great job talking all things Georgia Bulldogs. Graham, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. It's a pleasure to have you on once again.
Man, it's good to be on with you, and all that's going on is just, as the world turns, according to Carson Beck in Athens, Georgia, right now. Everyone's asking what's going on with the interceptions, and we're starting to run out of good answers. So here we are.
Let's start there, Graham. You lead me into that. Again, Georgia's sitting right now going in this game 7-1 overall, 5-1 in conference play. You're coming off a win in the cocktail party. And while it may have been underwhelming at times, talking to Georgia folks this week, Graham, there's so many ghosts in Jacksonville that a win is a win is a win in the cocktail party, especially when you win the game by 2 touchdowns, no matter how it happens. But when you look at this Georgia team to this point, Graham, again, you get the big, really signature win at Texas. You win that game by double digits. That was at number 1 Texas when, it felt like the entire country was on the Longhorns. And, of course, Kirby Smart in the postgame was very quick to let us all know that his team was doubted going into that one. You lost the game earlier in the season at Alabama in a game in which Beck had that horrendous first half, and really Georgia just as a whole had that horrendous first half, came back in the second half, nearly won that football game. But it's even with a 7-1 record and only 1 conference loss, that 1 blemish in Tuscaloosa, Graham, it feels like it's been really up and down. And to your point, a lot of that stems from the Carson Beck interceptions, some of his inconsistencies. And listen, I was critical of Carson Beck, Graham, earlier this week, but if you go back and look, it's just there's a lot of things that the offensive line hasn't been as good as we thought it would be. The running game hasn't been as good as we thought it would be. You've had some receivers run the wrong routes and drop balls, and it hasn't quite clicked the way we thought offensively. So I feel like, Graham, we're asking for more from a Georgia team that we feel like should be more in there. What's the vibe right now of this Dogs team going into this game against Ole Miss and just kind of where they stand? You mentioned a lot of chatter, especially starting at the quarterback position.
I mean, yeah, I think that there's the vibe of like, why didn't all that stuff you're talking about right there, get fixed on the bye week? Because I think you saw Georgia beat Texas the way they did and, play great on defense. Play on defense like I think we all thought that was in there somewhere, but until you see it, you don't know for sure. But on offense, like, it was kind of a middling performance, and you had 3 turnovers. They were timely on offense, and they did enough. But, like, if the offense had been clicking in that game, Georgia could have beaten Texas by 40 points. I mean, that's not an exaggeration at all. So, yeah, I think there is, like, concern that this is just what the Georgia offense is at this point in the season. It's November, and you've had 2 bye weeks, and this is still what they look like. At this point, is that just who you are? I think there's a case to be made for that. The vibe, though, is like nobody gets up or down at this point for according to opponent the way that Georgia does, right? Like, I mean, I think that's part of the product of not losing to anyone not named Alabama in 4 years now, is that Georgia is just kind of like not that interested to go out there and beat Florida like they were in 21 or 22. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not that big of a game anymore. And I'm not saying that's right, because I think they're capable of going out every week and probably beating, 9 or 10 out of the teams on their schedule by 30 plus, but that doesn't seem to be the level of attention that they have for some of these teams. And I do think that there are elements of kind of the Kirby Smart, like, look, he's going to tell you every game's big. He's going to tell you he's got respect for every staff, and he's going to tell you that humility is a week away. And he is right about all of those things, but you also can't fool these kids. And, like, they go through game planning during the week and they realize, like, hey, we're not running any of those exotic blitzes that we were running at Texas, Like we're not like, why is Nazir Stackhouse only playing 25 snaps this week when he played 58 in Austin and, and 56 in Tuscaloosa? Like, what does that tell us about this team that we're playing? Right. So I do think that, yeah, all that stuff is a problem. And offensively, I don't know that it's going to get any better. Maybe having Wilson and Ratledge healthy again up front will get it better. But I also think that when it comes time to, play the marquee game, the type of game that others, the people are actually picking against Georgia in, they're going to show up. Does that mean they'll win? I don't know necessarily, but like they'll show up, especially on defense. And it's really just going to be on the offense not screw it up, because if they ever put together 4 clean quarters, it'll be beautiful. And we'll all talk about, oh, they're clearly the best team in the country.
To your point, Graham, for Georgia right now, it feels like everyone they play, Georgia is their biggest game. And for everybody that Georgia plays, it's another game. And that is kind of what you've seen in some of these, 10-point margin of victory against Mississippi State, an Auburn win that was pretty sluggish, the 1-point win at Kentucky, some of those underwhelming, quote unquote, underwhelming results, if you will. But you mentioned Carson Beck, Mike Bobo, Graham, whether you think it's right, wrong, or indifferent. He's caught a little bit of heat as well. I mean, what do you make of the offense and Carson Beck? And I don't think it's a Bobo problem. I think it's crazy. I mean, Bobo's a guy that's engineered some of the best offenses in Georgia history, literally. So I don't think it's him. I mean, what do you make of it? Is it just Carson Beck's just got to stop turning the football over? Like, how much of it do you put on him? Because there's obviously been a lot of struggles there, especially over the last couple of games.
Well, first of all, let me address the Bobo thing. Mike Bobo deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for being able to, essentially 3 times now this season, find his team in a game away from Sanford Stadium where Carson Beck is very much struggling to see the middle of the field, and his game plan very much involves attacking the middle of the field and finding out ways to go and score points and be efficient on offense and put up 500 yards and 30 plus points anyways, because that is what he has done in Tuscaloosa, Austin, in Jacksonville now. And I thought, last week sitting in the press box in Everbank Stadium after Carson Beck had that interception to open the third quarter, which really wasn't on him, as much as it was like he just got hit while he was throwing and weird bounces happened. But I was like, how does Bobo manage this now? Because mentally for Carson, can you really call a seam route to the tight end right now? Do you really feel like you can trust him to see that? And he's got this beautiful split zone run fake with Lawson Lucky looking like he's going to cross formation. And then all of a sudden Dylan Bell comes around on the end around and it's a 44-yard gain. And you're in business and things are starting to flow. And then you get an angle route to Cash Jones, this is creative stuff in my opinion. Not that an angle route is reinventing the wheel, but the personnel and how they're disguising that stuff is pretty cutting edge. So I think you got to give him some credit, man. Honestly, and anybody that, is on him about Beck, I would say go back to last year when he was a 4,000-yard passer with 24 TDs and 6 interceptions. He had the same offensive coordinator. So my belief on what is happening here is that Georgia has they've got a drop problem. They've had a drop problem all year. They got 18 drops now. They had 19 in all of 2023, right? So I think there's a confidence thing that has happened between Carson and his receivers at times. And then I think the communication thing you brought up, that's what Kirby keeps coming back to when he meets with us in the media. He keeps being hey, this signal here, miscommunication, all that. If you're a quarterback and you don't know that your receiver is going to be in the right spot, it's really hard to throw guys open. And that's how you end up with these throws that are laid over the middle and all that stuff. I think those things have kind of added up to where Georgia has enough errors offensively to where Carson Beck feels like if I got 3 downs, I might make, one right play that goes wrong because of something outside of me. So I better make 2 good plays every 3 downs. And it's like he started to overvalue some of these situations and press and make throws that he shouldn't. Like, I'm not excusing, like, there are some just, not well advised throws at all. Like, you cannot throw late over the middle in this league. You can't do that in any league. And he keeps doing that, and that's not okay. I'm not excusing that, but how we got to this point, I understand, because I think he's in a spot where it's like, I gotta make the most out of every play, because we may have errors elsewhere that, negate first down or second down. So it's a tough spot for Georgia, and I don't know that you can fix it at this point beyond just saying, look, Carson, like, what you're doing on all these other plays is enough for us to win. And your receivers helped you a lot in Jacksonville. Even when you were inaccurate, like Dylan Bell's juggling balls to himself and knocking the wind out of his body to dive and catch it for you. So I think that if they can just get him to cut that out, that they're fine offensively, but they can't stop throwing the ball, because Trevor Etienne's not 100% healthy. They're already down Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson. So you're essentially in a spot where 3 of your top 4 running backs are, at least not 100%. 2 of them are out. And, it's just the offensive line hasn't been great run blocking either. Maybe as Ratledge continues to work back into that lineup with Jared Wilson, that improves. But as Kirby said, if we're not going to stop throwing the ball, we throw the ball well. We pass protect well, and on the offensive line. So I think that they've got to just keep on plugging, man, and hope that this time around, when it's 1st and 10, and you got a corner bailing on the backside of cover 2, and there's 2 guys and one of yours, you can get them to eat that.
So, Graham, as we look at this game in Oxford, Georgia travels to Vaught-Hemingway to take on Ole Miss. Of course, this is a do-or-die type of showdown for the Rebels specifically. Their college football playoff hopes hang in the balance. When you look at Ole Miss, again, they've been very up and down in their own right. Already have 2 losses, like I mentioned, one which felt inexcusable to Kentucky at home, and also the other at LSU in overtime. But beat the brakes off Arkansas last week. It was more of the Ole Miss offense we expected to see. Graham, when you take a look at Ole Miss in regards to like matchups in this game, some areas that you think Georgia can exploit and take advantage of, and some areas that you think Ole Miss has the advantage and give you some concern for the Dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough with Ole Miss because they like to score points when they can, right? And so, like, statistically, if you look at where they rank in a lot of overarching things that I like to track in our previews, like, they're a top 10 offense in passing success rate and some of these things. I look at Ole Miss and it's like, I think they're very, kind of boom or bust on offense from a passing perspective. And I think that their run game has been so, kind of like Georgia in a lot of ways, right? Like, they haven't really been able to get explosive in the run game most weeks. And I think that lends itself to some levels of predictability that Georgia tends to do well against, honestly. Like, generally speaking, you see Kirby Smart against an offense that's in 3rd and long a lot, he's going to have a good day. I think for Georgia, you got to love the way that Ole Miss's offensive line looked against Kentucky and against LSU. Like, you have to look at that and say, hey, like, Texas couldn't block us. We had 7 sacks in that game. And do we probably feel good about matching up against Ole Miss's offensive line and throwing some things at them that kind of keep them on their heels? I would think so. Yeah. The flip side is, like, Georgia has not played balls down the field very well this year on defense in the secondary. And you got to kind of think that it being Lane and Dart, they're going to just put some balls in the air at some point. And Georgia's boundary corners haven't been great at turning around and finding balls in the air this year. So we'll see, like, how they play things. But I think that's what scares you for Georgia is, do they put some 50-50 balls up down the boundaries that give you problems? On the offensive side of the ball for Georgia, I think like it's that Ole Miss pass rush, right? I think they got 6 guys with 20+ pressures and 3+ sacks. A lot of that has come against lesser competition. Like, again, I do think Lane will kind of blow somebody out if he's got the chance, and that kind of inflates some of these numbers. But I also think that, there's some reality there. Like they have some dudes up front that they didn't have last year when these two teams faced, and how Georgia is able to kind of manage that and run the ball, I think feels like probably the big key to this game.
On that note, Graham, you mentioned key to the game. Key or keys to the game in your mind for Georgia specifically? They're going to go into Oxford, get the win. Again, this is only a field goal or so spread in this football game. Some folks are going out on a limb. They think Ole Miss might be able to get it done, get hot at the right time, if you will. Again, Georgia's still on that quest to get to the SEC title game, and, of course, all sights set on the national championship. We just had playoff rankings, Graham, come out. They were the projected 2 seed in that. So if Georgia is going to go on the road, get this W, key or keys for you they have to accomplish to get a big road win?
Yeah, I mean, I forgive me for being like painfully obvious here, but it's the turnovers. Like, if Georgia does not have more than 1 turnover in this game, I find it hard to see them losing, truthfully. I think that you look at Georgia's defense and where they've given up points and where they've given up drives this year. Like, Texas gets a pick 6 where they start on Georgia's, inside Georgia's 5, I think, and then they get a short field off of a missed kickoff to start the second half. And that's it. Like, they don't drive the field on Georgia all night. They don't have a 75-yard drive in that game. So I think coming into this game, like, it's got to be protect your defense if you're Georgia. The defense is the strength of your team. Don't do things that put it at risk. Now, Kirby used to like go into turtle mode back in, 2018, 2019, where he would just be like, all right, like, don't do shit with the football on offense, basically. Just, a punt is a good play, and we've got an all-world defense, and we'll just get out of here and win like 17-13 or something. That's not how they play anymore, nor am I suggesting it should be. But if they don't turn the ball over, I think that they're going to probably fare pretty well. Other keys I would say is, for Georgia on defense, like, I think you look at, other than points off turnovers, it's been a lot of busted coverages in the back end. And they had one against Florida last week. Aiden Mizell just runs kind of past Malachi Starks back there. I think if you're UGA, like, with Lane's tempo and that microphone in Dart's ear up until 15 seconds in the play clock, there's a lot that they can adjust and move around and all that. Like, I think for UGA, you have got to be really good with your eyes and really good pre-snap, because Bama got them with some pre-snap motion that out-leveraged them. Like, they've got to keep their feet moving, not just after the snap, but before the snap as well.
Going to be a fun one in Oxford this weekend. Vaught Hemingway Stadium, 2:30 local time kickoff, and we will be there in person, taking it all in. Graham Coffey, Dawgs Central. Graham, you do a fantastic job, man. Grateful to call you a friend.
You as well.
Grateful to call you a friend, man. Let folks know where they can check out your work in case they've been living under a rock.
Yeah, absolutely. Check us out, DawgsCentral.com. I do a lot of deep dive preview, deep dive kind of analysis post game, and obviously just your day-to-day Georgia news on top of all that. So come find us there, and you can follow me on Twitter at Graham Coffey DC.
Graham, appreciate you taking the time, and just a quick teaser for the audience. Be linking up with you in Athens very soon, my man.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Chris, enjoy your work, obviously, and love what you guys are doing on the channel with the road tour and all that good stuff. And, and everybody that works with you. Enjoy Dave and those guys as well. So keep up the great stuff.
Appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.